This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, Bruchim Haba, welcome everyone to tonight's Shiur. Penultimate Shiur before Rosh Hashanah. The series of Shiurim on Sefer Devarim are sponsored by our dear friend, Dr. Zakheim, Umeshpachta, Liloi Nishmas, Reb Shloima Eliezer ben Harav Yaakov Zakheim, his Shamash Ben Aliyah, B'Yom Me'el Tziyosher for their whole family, Ad Bias Goel Tzadek. If anybody would like to sponsor tonight's Shiur, it is available. Okay. Rosh Hashanah. This is our last Shiur on the subject of Rosh Hashanah, before Rosh Hashanah. I want to start with the Gemara in the end of Masechta Megillah on Daf Lamed Beis. The Gemara talks about the takana of Moshe Rabbeinu. So it's interesting, whatever mitzvahs are in the Torah are obviously the elisha, but there are mitzvahs that were enacted by Moshe Rabbeinu, and those mitzvahs are d'Rabbanan. And the Gemara says, Moshe tikein lahem liYisrael, Moshe was masakin for Klal Yisrael, sheyu shoyalin v'darshin b'inyanei shel yom, that they should question and expound on the subject of each Yom Tov, Hilchos Pesach b'Pesach, Hilchos Atzeres b'Atzeres, Hilchos Chag b'Chag. To learn the halachas of each Yom Tov on that Yom Tov. Pesach on Pesach, Shavuos on Shavuos, Sukkos on Sukkos. There are other Gemaras in Shas that you start 30 days before, but here Moshe Rabbeinu is masakein on the Yom Tov itself. And the Rishonim already ask, what about Shloshim Yom Koydem HaChag? And that's addressed by many Rishonim, the Ran, the Beis Yosef, and so forth. But here is a takana of Moshe Rabbeinu, to learn the halachas of Yom Tov on Yom Tov. Which Yom Tov? Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkos. And the obvious question, and this question is raised by the Marsha, is these are not the only Yom Tovim. What about Rosh Hashanah? What about Yom HaKippurim? Why was Moshe Rabbeinu not masakin that on Rosh Hashanah you should learn Hilchos Shofar? By the way, where in Shulchan Aruch is Hilchos Shofar? Siman Taf, Kuf, Pei, Vav, Gematria, Shofar, says Rabbi Yaakov Emden. So if you want to sound like you're a Talmud Chacham, you remember Taf, Kuf, Pei, Vav, Gematria, Shofar. What happened to Rosh Hashanah? Why was Moshe Rabbeinu not masakin that on Rosh Hashanah you should learn Hilchos Rosh Hashanah on Yom Kippur, you should learn Hilchos Yom Kippur? That's the kasha of the Marsha at the end of Maseches Megillah. Furthermore, there's a very difficult Gemara in Eruvin on Daf Mem Amud Beis. The Gemara in Eruvin says, Amar Rabbi said, Ki Havina be Rav Huna. When I was in Rav Huna's house, Iboy we had the following question. Mahu loymar zman b'Rosh Hashanah v'Yom HaKippurim. Should you say Shechianu on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur? You hear this Peladika question? What a wondrous question. The Gemara has a shaila whether you should make a Shechianu on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Now we know we do. We make it in Kiddush, we make it on the Shofar, we make Yom Kippur, but the Gemara has a shaila, should you make Shechianu on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur? What kind of shaila is that? Gemara doesn't ask if you should make Shechianu on Sukkos, on Pesach. It's obvious. These are days that come mizman lizman from time to time. Of course you make a Shechianu. Why does the Gemara have a tzad, a position that perhaps you should not say Shechianu on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur? So now we come to one of our favorite subjects when it comes to the high holiday season. I believe we've already given 3 shiurim on the following subject. One time I even gave a shiur in Muncie. I said all 3 perushim in the following yesod, but I put Numerical on the sheet because this is actually addressed in 3 different places by the Zohar HaKadosh. The following interesting phenomenon, and Be'ezus Hashem tonight we're going to say a totally different pshat than we've ever said in the past. We know that throughout Tanakh, the Yom Tov of Rosh Hashanah is referred to with the following name, appellation, word. What is it? Hayom. Today. For example, what parsha do we read right before Rosh Hashanah? Every single year, without exception. Atem nitzavim hayom kulachem lifnei Hashem lekechem. You are standing today, all of you, before Hashem your God. Somebody came into our house this week to fix the blinds. You know, one of the blinds is broken. So he said he was listening to a shiur. He said, I know you lane, but do you daven for the Amud? I said, how you know I lane? He said, if you hear one shir, you know you like to lane. Anyway, Atem nitzavim hayom kolchem. Think about the meaning of the words. Could there be any more appropriate words to lane right before Rosh Hashanah? Atem nitzavim hayom kolchem lefnei Hashem Elokechem. You are all standing before HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But it's not only Atem nitzavim. If you go to Sefer Eov, in Eov Parak Aleph, Pasuk Vav, Vayehi hayom, it was the day. Vayavoyu b'nei Elokim, and the Malachim came lehisyatzev al Hashem, to stand by God. Vayavoy gam hasatan b'soicham, and the Satan came among them. What day was it? What day did the Satan come to prosecute? Rashi says, Oisai Yom Haya Rosh Hashanah. That day was Rosh Hashanah. And what is it called? Vayehi hayom. Atem nitzavim hayom. Vayehi hayom. It's Rosh Hashanah every time. Where else? In Malachim. Remember the woman, the Shunem, and the Shunem always used to house the Navi Elisha. Vayehi hayom vayavoyer Elisha el Shunem v'sham isha gedola v'atachzek bo elachal. So this woman housed Elisha when? Vayehi hayom. By the way, and as we're going to see in the Zohar HaKadosh, in at least 3 places, Elisha was so taken by the woman, he was so moved by her hospitality, that he said, is there anything I could do for you? Could I put in a good word by the governor? Could I put in a good word by I don't know who? Could I do something for you? And she said, no, b'toich ami anochi yosheves, don't mention my name. And basically the Zohar says, what did Elisha mean, should I put in a good word? He meant, today's the Yom Adin, I could go to God and say, give the woman a good judgment. I mean, who wouldn't want the Navi to give them a good judgment on Rosh Hashanah? People go to a big Rebbe before the Yom Adin to get a bracha. Here you have the Navi, you have Elisha, and Elisha says, whatever you want, I'll give you. And she said, don't say my word, make believe I don't exist. And the Zohar says this was a big day, this was Rosh Hashanah. Take a look in the Zohar, Parshas Pinchas, number 8. Amar Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda said to the Rashbi, tell me some good Zachin about Rosh Hashanah. So Rabbi Shimon started, Vayahi hayom. Whenever it says Vayahi, it's a Lashon Tsar. Vayahi bimei, it's a Lashon Tsar. Vayahi hayom, a day of Tsar. What day was it? Rosh Hashanah. Dina Kashya. And Elisha came to the Shunem on Rosh Hashanah. Says the Zohar, Bechol Asar Vayahi hayom Rosh Hashanah. Whenever it says Vayahi hayom, it's always Rosh Hashanah without exception.
Shouldn't it be Yom Kippur? Hayom. One day, the day.
The day.
To me, it would mean Yom Kippur.
That's what maybe you would think. And the Zohar says, nope, it's Rosh Hashanah. The Zohar in Parshas Boy, Rabbi Lazar gave a drasha on the pasuk in Eov, Vayehi hayom vayavoyu b'nei Elokim l'syatzev al Hashem, and the Satan came, Vayehi hayom da Rosh Hashanah, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu stands to judge the world. Says the Zohar in Parshas B'Shach, that's the day that God visits and remembers those who are barren. Whenever it says Vayehi hayom, it's Rosh Hashanah. Atem nitzavim hayom. Vayehi hayom in Eov. Vayehi hayom in Malachim. So comes Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld, Kedarkoi B'Kodesh, and as we said in the past, he has the most astounding gematrias that you ever heard. Here's a good one. He says, first of all, if the Zohar says, whenever it says Hayom, it's Rosh Hashanah, what about this pasuk in Tehillim? L'mishpatecha amdu hayom. In your judgments, they stand today. Ki hakol avadecha. Everyone is your servant. What better description is there of Rosh Hashanah than L'mishpatecha amdu hayom ki hakol avadecha? In your judgment, they stand hayom. On what day? Rosh Hashanah. Says Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld, the gematria of the entire pasuk, L'mishpatecha amdu hayom ki hakol avadecha, is Rosh Hashanah. The numerical value of that entire pasuk is Rosh Hashanah. By the way, after they blow shofar, Ashrei ha'am yoidei sirua Hashem b'yarpanecha yehalech. Unfortunate is the nation, yoidei sirua. How many blasts do we blow? 100 blasts. Yoidei is gematria, 100. We know the secret of Yoidei, 100 blasts. It is. It's 100. Yoidei is 100. What do we learn on the first day of Rosh Hashanah? Vashem pakad Sarah kasher amar vayas Hashem l'Sarah kasher diber. Why amar? Why diber? Ayin in the upcoming Sefer B'siyata D'Shmaya from the Arachayim HaKadosh. But so we learn Vashem pakad. What do we learn on the second day? Vayehi acharei hadvarim ha'ele v'ha'elokim nisa. Says Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld. How many total psukim do we learn on the first day of Rosh Hashanah and the second day? Gematria Rosh Hashanah. The number of words total that we learn day 1 and day 2 of Rosh Hashanah are Gematria Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah, a lot. Rosh is 501. Hashanah is 360. What? 360. Thank you. 360. So 501, 861. 861 words. By the way, how does the laning of the second day of Rosh Hashanah end off? V'yes tacham, v'yes Ma'acha. The last name is Ma'acha. So you say, what kind of random way is it to end off Rosh Hashanah laning? Ma'acha. Who's Ma'acha? Who's Ma'acha? Your sister-in-law is Ma'acha? You know anyone named Ma'acha? What's Ma'acha? Ma'acha is Rosh Tevois. Melech al kol ha'aretz for Rosh Hashanah. That's why we end off with the word Ma'acha, says Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld. Comes the Ma'or V'Shemesh. And the Ma'or V'Shemesh says, but after the Akedah, Vayikra Avraham Shem Hamakai Mahu Hashem Yireh Asher Yeomer. It will be said when? Hayoim. It will be said on Rosh Hashanah. We'll invoke the Zchus of the Akedah. And if in case you didn't know what Hayoim is, Behar is Rosh Tevois B'Rosh Hashanah. That we will mention.
What would be the name of the place? What was the name of this place?
Hashem Yireh.
Hashem Yireh?
Yeah.
That's the name of the place?
Yeah. Ayin Barashi Sham. So, in other words, now that we're learning that Hayom refers to Rosh Hashanah, we understand that in the context of the Akedah, Ravinu's Mispala, that it should be said about the Akedah, Hayom, Asher Yomer Hayom, it should be said on Rosh Hashanah, that Hashem should invoke the Zchus of the Akedah, and of course, the most notable Hayom is Ha-Hayom, Harasoilam, and I forgot one, there's another Hayom. Hayom te'amtzeinu, Hayom te'gadleinu, Hayom te'varech, Hayom te'rusheinu l'toiva. Right? That's a lot of also all those Hayoms. Why is Rosh Hashanah called today? I mean, you call it today. Call it Tuesday. Call it Wednesday. I would call it Wednesday. You know, the Shiur is on Wednesday. Call Rosh Hashanah Wednesday, regardless of what they. Why today? Today's not Rosh Hashanah. The day. So Yuma also has an explanation why we don't want to say the name of the Yom Tif, right? It's like the name of Yom Kippur is like the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we once discussed. What is the significance that Rosh Hashanah is called today? Marv Rabbi Sai, I'd like to share with you a very simple thought, a very basic thought. I think it's important for Rosh Hashanah and for every day and moment of our life. The Mishnah says in Perkei Avos, Parak Beis, Mishnah Yud, Hey Mamru Shleisha Dvarim, Rebbe Lezer Oimer, Yehi Kavod Chavercha Chavav Alecha Kishalach. Honor your friend like your own, like you would want yourself. Al Tehei Noach Lecha, you shouldn't easily anger. V'shuv Yoim Echad Lefnei Misasach. Do tshuva one day before you go. Which is very convenient, by the way, because you could just put on Google Calendar, put on the Yom HaPtira, and then Google will remind you 24 hours before, there'll be a little alarm. In 24 hours it's time, and you'll get a Google reminder, okay, do tshuva. because everybody, of course, knows when they're going to go. Everybody knows everything. So this way you could set a few alarms, and if that alarm doesn't work, you could, get a shomer, get a chaver, just to remind you the day before. Obviously that's absurd, and in Avos Rav Nosson, Perek Tesvav, Mishnah Daled, there's a continuation of this discussion, which is also quoted in Masechta Shabbos on Daf Kuf Nun Gimel. The Talmidim asked Rabbi Lezer, V'chi Adam yoidea be'eza yoim yamos sheyasa tshuva. Does anybody know when they're going to go? Amar lahem, exactly. That's the point. Gotcha. Kol sheken sheyasa tshuva hayoim. Certainly you should do tshuva today. Shema yamos lamachar, because you might go tomorrow. And yashav lamachar, do again tshuva tomorrow, because you might go the next day. V'nimsa kol yamav b'shuva, and it will come out every day of life. You'll have done tshuva. This is quoted exactly verbatim in Masechta Shabbos Kuf Nun Gimel, where the Gemara adds, Shlomo said b'chachmasai b'chol eis yiu b'gadecha levanim. At all times, your clothing should be white. Says Rabbeinu Yoina in the Sha'ar Tshuva in Sha'ar Beis. In Sha'ar Beis, Rabbeinu Yoina gives us 6 motivations to do tshuva. He talks about if Chas v'Shalom person faces difficulties during Aseres Yimei Tshuva, old age. Rabbeinu Yonah gives different things that one may experience that should motivate a person to do tshuva. And then finally, Rabbeinu Yonah says, Kol eis yikain likras elokav. You always got to be prepared. Ki lo yeda ha'adam es itai. A person doesn't know their time. Says Rabbeinu Yoina, Kil yoisav yishtainin. One's kidneys should churn. Uvitzdaka yikainin. One should solidify themselves with tzedakah to be in a state where they could return their spirit b'tahara. And says Rabbeinu Yoina, every day one should investigate and search and analyze their ma'asim. And when Shlomo Melech says b'chaleis yu b'gadecha levanim, when he says your clothing should be white, it refers to the cleanliness, the purity of one's soul in tshuva. Rabbeinu Yonah says the following mashal. There was once a woman, and she was sitting in front of the mirror, and she was putting on her makeup and her jewelry, and she was farpitzing herself, And they said, hey, lady, your husband's a sailor. He's in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. He ain't coming back for 6 months. And she said, you never know when Hurricane Harry will come. Henry. And Hurricane Henry as well. And you never know when the wind will come and turn back the husband. And he's going to knock on the door. And I want to be ready for him when he comes. Says Rabbeinu Yoina, we always have to think that. Because we never know when the Rebbeinu Shalom will summon us. And then Rabbeinu Yoina writes, a person should conjure up the following image. When things are going well, and a person is tranquil. Says Rabbeinu Yoina, one should imagine themselves in the last moment of life. How will they say vidoy b'leiv shalim? And that's what you should do every day. So it seems like there's a special inyan that one should not wait until Elul to do tshuva. In fact, the Sifrei Chasidus tell us, and Ran Gamliel Rabinovich, number 28, quotes the memra of the Sifrei Chasidim. They say, Al tifnu el ha'alilim. Don't wait till Chodesh Elul. Al tifnu el ha'alilim. But rather, he quotes Rav Levi Yitzchak of Barditchev that one should live their whole life in a state of tshuva. The Gemara tells us that if you see a Talmid Chacham doing something wrong, don't question them, because maybe they did tshuva. The lashon of the Gemara in Brachas on Daf Yotes, look at number 20. Tanu Dvei Rabbi Shmuel. Imra'isa Talmid Chacham sha'avar avera b'layla al taharar achrav b'yoim shema asa tshuva. If you see a great person doing an avera in the night, don't question them. Maybe they did tshuva. The Gemara says, maybe? No! Vaday asa tshuva. You could take it to the bank. Why? I don't know. Well, how do you know they for sure did tshuva? Maybe they'll wait till Yom Kippur, or they'll wait till Rosh Hashanah, or they'll wait till Elul, or at least in Chodesh Av, even according to the Ben La Ashri. But how do you know they're going to do tshuva right away? The answer is there's a chazaka that a Talmud Chacham will do tshuva immediately. In fact, the Mishnah Berurah writes in the halachos of going to sleep. He quotes in Siman Reish Lamed Tes that the Svarim tell us before you go to sleep at night, you should think about your day, you should think about your repertoire, and if you did an Avera, you should say Vidoy immediately. Especially Lashon Hara, Chanifas, those kinds of things that are very common. So here already we have a practice that one should make sure that they do tshuva every single night. But it seems like there's an emphasis to make sure that every day of one's life is infused with the mitzvah of tshuva. We're learning the Yigaras Ramban. The Yigaras Ramban writes a lashon, look at number 22 at the end. The Ramban writes you should investigate your masim in the morning, in the evening. V'zeh yu kol yamecha b'tshuva. This way, every day of your life is full of tshuva. In other words, this whole thing about Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah, better get your seat for the high holidays. The whole thing's a scam. The whole thing's a joke. We mean Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah, as if, one day a year, we're going to come to shul, we're going to clap al chait, and we're going to take it serious, we're going to put on a white robe, and we're going to maybe even a white yarmulke, and we're going to eat pomegranates, and the head of a ram, or the head of a fish, and we're going to eat, I don't know what, merin, and that's great, and we're going to be good for a day. No. Kol yamecha b'shuva. Now listen to this lashon of the Torah, the Devar of the Ramak. Does anybody know which sphera is associated with tshuva? We have chachma, bina, das, chesed, gevura, teferes, netzach, hoid, yisoid, bina. Bina is associated with tshuva. Says the Ramak, says Moshe Cordovero, Ein davar chashuv kamaya. There's nothing greater than tshuva mibnei shehi mesakenes kol pagam. It corrects every infraction. And just like bina sweetens dinim, a person should do tshuva. Umi shemeharer b'tshuva kol yamav. One who spends their whole life thinking in tshuva, he will cause that bina will illuminate every single day of their life. V'nimtzu kol yamav b'tshuva. It seems like there's an idea you want to illuminate bina into every day of the year. You want that, the Arizal writes, it's brought by the Chaim HaKadosh Parshas Vayechi. Every day of life is like a living entity. You want every single day to have in it the light of tshuva. You don't want one day to go by that it should not be filled with the light of tshuva. Look at the Ramak. V'zuhi malas hatshuva sha'adam yisnahig ba tzarich shebechol yoim v'yoim yaharher ba v'yaseh tshuva. So every single day you should have a thought of tshuva. On the way to shul, you should think, I regret my misdeeds. Chatasi avisi pashati. I'm going to try not to do it again. Every day of one's life, you should try to illuminate with the midah of tshuva. So here it is. Before you go to sleep at night, person he does tshuva, he says vidoy. Every day you want to infuse in tshuva. Comes the Reishis Chachma, Rabbi Yoel Dividas. He says an interesting thing. You know what else you should do tshuva? Before you eat. Before any meal you eat, you should do tshuva. Now, he says, if you're a Baal tshuva, you should be misvadeh before you eat. This way you'll be like shechting your Yetzer Hara a little bit, like Rabbi Yonah writes in the Sefer Hayira, that a Baal tshuva should be misvadeh before they eat and should investigate their actions. This way you won't eat like a glutton, because you'll think about how many sins you have, and really you're not worthy to be fed by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and Hashem's only feeding you bechazdai. Comes the Shla HaKadosh, And the Shlah says that even though the Reish Chachma says only a Baal Tshuva should do Tshuva before they eat, look in the Lashon of the Shlah. V'li nira. Number 25, second paragraph. Shekol Adam Kosher Yizvadeh. Every kosher Jew should say vidui before they eat. And this way, you're Mekayim, Zoiveach, Toida, Yichabdanani. Because eating is like a carbon, and every carbon had vidui, and the simon is kilifnei lachmi an chasi tavai, before my bread I should moan, and you should say vidui. And what does he say? But on Shabbos you're not allowed to say vidui. So what do you say on Shabbos? It says Ashal on Shabbos before you eat you should say Umal Hashem Elokecha es levavcha v'es levav zarecha. That's also a form of doing tshuva. So wait a second, you're telling me that every night before I go to sleep I should do tshuva, and every time I eat like 9 meals a day. You're saying like 9 times a day? I don't mean me personally. So the whole day I'm doing tshuva? I thought tshuva is only for Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah a little bit, and Yom Kippur by Ne'ilah. On a good year, no, it's not due to Yom Kippur. Tshuva is a year-long, every single day. This is something that we're constantly involved in. By the way, the Ben La'ashri in Parshas Eikev says the words V'haya Eikev Tishma'un is Gematria V'ata Zon Keshera. V'ata is a lashon of tshuva, a remez to this teaching that before one eats, one should try to do tshuva.
Are we judged every day, or are we judged only on Rosh Hashanah?
So you say, what's going on over here? Why are we doing tshuva every day? I thought we're only judged on Rosh Hashanah. So thank you for bringing me into the next point. I didn't pay him to say that. But Ram Gamliel Rabinovich says this takes on even further meaning based on the Gemara Rosh Hashanah Daf Tezayin that brings the opinion of Rabbi Yosi, Adam Nidain B'chal Yaim. Every day a person is judged. By the way, so the question is, so what are we getting all worked up on Rosh Hashanah? So I told you, the whole thing's, no. So that's the question of Rabbi Ezel Acharif. If Adam Nidain B'chal Yaim, so what's the whole Rosh Hashanah about? So he says like this. Every day when God judges us, we're the muchsuk, God's the moitzi. Right now, God, I have my health, I have my house, I have my family, it's mine. You got to come up with a good reason to take it away. So it's hamoitzi mechaver of haraya. On Rosh Hashanah, all bets are off. We stand before God, kedalim u'charash, we have nothing. We have no money in the account, no family, we're mesim. And on Rosh Hashanah, we ask God to resurrect us. So that's the difference between Rosh Hashanah and every day. But the bottom line is, this is another aspect of why we do need to do tshuva every day. We're judged every day, but then the Gemara says, Rav Nasan Omer, Adam Nidain B'chol Shah. Every moment a person is judged. Every moment is a Yom Adin. We all know things could change on a dime. Everybody knows that a person's entire life can change on a dime. Every aspect of life is up for grabs every moment.
Is an Indian of final judgment.
Okay, so Rosh Hashanah we get a little bit more worked up. We put on the white robe on Rosh Hashanah. But there's a concept that one should be attached to tshuva, kol yemei chayenu. And here's another element I want to share with you. There's a beautiful sefer, Sidurei Shel Shabbos. Who wrote the Sidurei Shel Shabbos? The author of the Ber Mayim Chaim, one of the great masters of Chasidus. And we know that the midah of bina is what is called tshuva ila'ah. And he speaks about the great blessing of tshuva and the greatness of tshuva and how important and illuminating tshuva is. He says it's such a shame you have to sin to be able to do tshuva. You know, like to say, it's such a shame tshuva is wasted on the wicked. You know, if only tzaddikim could do tshuva. I mean, the madrega of tshuva is so great. He says, I feel like I'm losing out. I don't know, maybe I have to get in on the sin to get involved in this tshuva business. So he said, he has come up with a way that even someone who hasn't sinned can also be involved in the process of tshuva. And this also further explains why yesterday's tshuva is not good enough for today, and today's tshuva won't be good enough for tomorrow. A famous story of Reb Sadia Gaon. Now, I think this is like the earliest record of this story. So even though Reb Sadia Gaon lived, 800 years before the Be'er Mayim Chayim, but this is a famous story about Reb Sadia Gaon. A Talmud once came into Reb Sadia Gaon's house in the middle of the night, and he sees Reb Sadia Gaon. He's afflicting himself, he's rolling in the snow, he's doing penitence, he's doing tshuva, he's afflicting himself, and he says, Rebbe, what avera did you do that you're rolling in the snow? If you need to roll in the snow, how many mountains in the Himalayas do we need to roll in to be mechaper for our avainos? And Reb Sadia Gaon says, I'll tell you the truth, I never did this before. But something happened to me yesterday, and it changed my perspective on everything. I went to an inn, and the owner of the inn, he was mechabed me, okay, nicely, like he's mechabed anybody. And he gave me a room, and a pillow, and some food. He treated me like anybody else. The next morning, word spread that Reb Sadia Gaon was in town, and the whole city came out to greet Reb Sadia Gaon. And everybody's lining up to get his bracha, and they're showering kavod on him, and the innkeeper, he sees this is Reb Sadia Gaon, so he gets in on the action. And he's also being mechabed Reb Sadia Gaon. Reb Sadia Gaon is taking leave in the afternoon, and the innkeeper comes running over. He says, Moiri v'Rabbi, be moichel me, be moichel me, be moichel. He said, what's there to be moichel? You were mechabed me, kavod malachim today. He says, yes. But yesterday, I wasn't mechabed you, kavod malachim. I didn't know who you were. If I would have known who you were, I would have given you the proper kavod that you deserve and that you need, that I should have given you. But I didn't understand. I didn't know. I didn't recognize you. I didn't know what you looked like. Says the Be'er Mayim Chayim, these words, this story hit me like a ton of bricks. Because if a basar v'adam recognizes and realizes that even if they didn't do anything wrong, but a lack of awareness of somebody's greatness also is worthy of asking slicha mechila, then every day of our life and every year of our life, our understanding and our recognition of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is supposed to deepen, is supposed to be more profound, is supposed to be more meaningful. And maybe we didn't do anything wrong yesterday, but if we would have known the chashivus of tefillah yesterday, the chashivus of Torah yesterday, the chashivus of this mitzvah yesterday, we wouldn't have done the mitzvah on that pedestrian level. We would have done it the way we do it now. And that, therefore, says the Be'er Mayim Chayim, is an inyan and a bechina and a dimension of tshuva that we need to do every single day. Because as we learn and as we grow, okay, now I know. Yeah, but if you would have known yesterday, you would have done the mitzvah on a much greater level. And that's something that we should even do tshuva for. This is something we should ask Hashem slicha mechila. Rebbe Hashem, I beit mechila, I didn't understand the chashivas of this bracha yesterday. If I would have said it with more kavana, with more zehiros. And therefore the bottom line is that tshuva is not reserved for Elul. And it's not reserved for Rosh Hashanah, and it's not reserved for Yom Kippur. But it's shuv yom echad lefnei misasach. Do tshuva one day before you die. And since we don't know what that is, the Gemara says, Kol shekain sheyu kol yamecha b'seshuva. You need to attach every day of your life to tshuva. Every day of one's life has to be connected to bina ila'a. Every night before you go to sleep, be maharher b'tshuva. It's interesting. There are really two dimensions of tshuva. On the one hand, the Rambam says that a full tshuva requires charata, regret for your sin, azivas hached, stopping to sin, kabbalah al-asid, accepting never to do it again, and vidoy, confession. And yet, from the Gemara we see that if somebody merely has a thought of tshuva, if somebody merely thinks, I should have been better, that's also begeder tshuva. The Gemara even says if someone is maharher b'tshuva, they turn into a tzaddik momentarily. If somebody marries a woman, if the woman says, I'll marry you on condition you're a tzaddik gamor, and the guy's the biggest oisvarf on the face of the world, it's a safek kedushin, maybe he was maharher b'tshuva. The Meiri says that if somebody is in an avalanche, chas Hashem, a building collapsed on them, and they're a goyses, are you allowed to be mechalel Shabbos to prolong their life 1 second, even though you know they'll die? Yes. Ask the Meiri, what could the person do in 1 second that one moment is so valuable? And the Meiri says, Shema Yaharher B'tshuva. Maybe they'll have one thought of tshuva, and that will change their life. So this is something that we attach to every meal. You're about to eat a slice of pizza, you're about to have a barbecue. Before you start, before you make a bracha, you're mahara b'tshuva. Before you go to sleep, you're mahara b'tshuva. You're walking down the street, you're mahara b'tshuva. So what's Rosh Hashanah? Rosh Hashanah is to remind us what every day should look like. You know what Rosh Hashanah is? Hayayim, today. That's what we call Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah is not that day. It's not the first day of Tishrei. From the first day of Tishrei, we learn what today is, what Hayayim is. Today! Rosh Hashanah is today. Today's not Pesach. Today's not Shavuos. Today's not any other day. Today's Rosh Hashanah. Say, really?
Why is it called Yom HaZikaron?
Depends. One for the passport, one for the birth certificate, one for other documents, different names. Mar Rabbi comes a Marsha, and the Marsha says an amazing thing. You know why Moshe was masakin to learn Hilchos Pesach on Pesach, Hilchos Shavuos on Shavuos, Hilchos Sukkot on Sukkot? Why wasn't he masakin to learn Hilchos Rosh Hashanah on Rosh Hashanah? Because Moshe wasn't masakin to learn Hilchos Shabbos on Shabbos, because it's every single week. He was only masakin to learn halachas that come mizman lizman, at different intervals. Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur don't come at different intervals of the year. They're daily, says the Marsha. Rosh Hashanah is every single day where we need to do tshuva. The avodas hayom of Rosh Hashanah is hayom, is today, is every day. This is not Drush, this is the Marsha. Look at number 30. Yesh loymar dolai tikein Moshe b'shar mitzvahs mishum dolai asim mizvah. Why wasn't Moshe Rabbeinu masakin you should learn Hilchos Tefillin before you bar mitzvah? And you should learn Hilchos Tzitzis when you turn 3 years old. And you should learn Hilchos Mezuzah when you buy a house. Moshe was only masakin to learn halachas that come up mizman lizman. Says the Marsha, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Loi Mikru, mizman lizman, Diyesh la'adam litein libay l'tshuva b'chol Hashanah. But Pesach is once a year. And Sukkot is once a year. And Yom Kippur and Shavuos is once a year. Ooh, says the Marsha. The Gemara in Eruvin has a shaila. Should you say Shachiyanu on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur? What's the Havamina? Why wouldn't you say Shachiyanu on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur? The answer is, what's the bracha Shachiyanu? Shachiyanu b'giman lizmanu? Lazman hazeh. Rosh Hashanah is not a zman. We had it yesterday. We had it the day before. We had it the day before that. You wake up in the morning. Hayom! Today's today. Today's Rosh Hashanah. Rabbi Yitzchak Zilberstein was asked, if there's one Masechta you could master, and you know the Sfarim say you should have like one Masechta that you really know well. Anytime you have a free moment, you could go right into that Masechta. Which should be the Masechta of choice? He says based on this Marsha Masechta Megillah, he would suggest that if you could learn one Masechta, you should learn Masechta Rosh Hashanah. But the limud is clear that the avodah of tshuva of Rosh Hashanah is something that should spill over to the whole year. And yes, we have a Rosh Hashanah, and it is the most serious day of the year. And there is something to the solemnness and the seriousness of Rosh Hashanah, because that is the Yom Hadin. And obviously we can't treat every single day. We're maybe not in the madrega to treat every day with the same ra'ada and yira and pacha that we do Rosh Hashanah. But the idea that we should try to illuminate every day of our lives with tshuva, not just once a day, but it should be part of our, so to speak, our outlook, that we are loshuv b'shuva at regular intervals. V'yaseh tshuva hayom Shema Yamos Lamachar. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu give us the siyata d'shmaya that we should be zoichet to make every day Hayoim, to infuse every day with the great matana toiva of tshuva, the matana of tshuva ilah, the sfira of bina, and we should be zoiche to all the brachos of tshuva, gedoyla tshuva, shemagas ad kisei hakavod, and ultimately, ein Yisrael nigolim ela b'schus hatshuva, should be zoiche uval etzion goyel u'shava pesha b'Yakov Nom Hashem. Thanks for listening. B'ez Hashem, next Wednesday night, I think we're going to speak about Yom HaKippurim, because it will be our last year before Yom Kippur. And bracha v'hatzlacha. Have a good night. Shkoyach. V'chanani ben Akash Omer, Ratzah HaKadosh Baruch Hu L'zak Yisrael L'fikal Chir B'lam Torah Mitzvah Shenemer Adonai Chafetz Iman Tzikoy Yagdil Torah V'Yadir. Amen.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.